If you think of the natural birth of a child, the seed of a man joins the seed of a woman in her body. That's the first step. The seed of a man joins the seed of a woman in the woman's body. Secondly, consequently, a man and a woman, because of that, because of imparting that seed of the man into the woman, a man and a woman become a part of God's way of procreation, the continuation of creation. So God has said he created man in the beginning, and now he's using man, letting man participate in the procreation of mankind. And a baby is then conceived in the womb of the mother. And then thirdly, over the following 9 months, a great deal happens within the woman's womb. And those of you that, women that have had children, you know that and experience that more than we men. And I'm sure the scientists will tell us all about what actually happens in the womb of a woman when that baby is formed. But I know when my children, who have only recently come to us with pictures of little babies in their womb, you know, and you see at so young age, you see this child, something like this small, and you begin to see, you know, the head, the eyes, the fingers and everything else, and it's all being created. And we look at these pictures and say, my goodness, my goodness, my goodness. You know, God has made this possible. And then after 9 months, the baby is born. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And you see this little baby, and you look at it, and you say, how marvelous. Look at her little fingers. Look at her eyes. Look at her chin. Look at bits of hair. You know, and you get excited about it because it's so beautiful. It's so wonderful. And God has let man participate in that. He could have, if he wanted to, as he created Adam and Eve, said, right, I'll create multi-millions. And it could be throughout the whole earth. No process like this at all. But God has let man and woman participate in this new birth, this fruit experience of the woman. Now, I want us to note, without the male seed entering the woman's body, there is no child. There is no fruit. Okay? Now, Jesus said this. Think about what I've just said about the woman and the man being part of God's way of procreation. Then Jesus said, in the same way, this is John 3:8, in the same way, so it is with everyone born of the Spirit. Remember I said it's God's Spirit in your life that is beginning this transformation. So it is with new birth. It is in the same way, Jesus said, so it is with everyone who is born of the Spirit. And if you look at the context of that in John 3, Jesus is particularly referring to what he has already said, you must be born again. You must be born again. And it is the work of God's Spirit in your life, like the seed of the man in the woman's body joining her seed. It in the same way, that's what happens when you are born again. Now, Jesus used that phrase, born again, for a reason. Because it's not just an academic transformation. You just don't read a book and you begin to change and this, that, and the other, or anything like that. This is something that happens within. It's a spirit of God's work of recreation. God begins to work in your life and my life and turns everything upside down, if you like, and something new is happening. Brilliant. You must be born again. Note that without the creation work of the Spirit of God in a person, God working in you or me or whoever, you are not born again. That means you're not born again if you go to church and have never, you're not a Christian. I'll go back on that. Going to church does not make you a Christian. I remember listening to Billy Graham in one of his sermons, and he turned to the huge choir that was behind him and said, as a member of this choir does not make you a Christian. And whether you are here in England or in Malawi, going to your local church does not make you a Christian. It is good, perhaps, that you go to your local church, but that is the beginning, the first step where you should be introduced to what Jesus is teaching you. And he is teaching that you must be born again. You must experience this change in your life that's going to affect your whole life forever. And therefore, without God's work in your life of creation, you are not born again. And therefore, going back to what we've previously said, you cannot be transformed if you haven't been born again. Because the start is being at that stage where you are born again by the Spirit of God and a new life starts working and developing within you. It always starts, therefore, with rebirth, being born again. Now, Jesus shows us the way how to be born again. In John 12 and verse 24 and 25, which again you needn't turn to, Jesus says this, I tell you the truth, unless a grain of wheat falls in the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. So what he's saying is if you put a seed in the ground and it doesn't die, it just remains there. It doesn't do anything else. It just stays there. But if it dies, it produces many seeds. Now, Jesus uses this picture firstly in John 12 to explain what was going to happen to him. As he said, the seed. And this is what he said was going to happen. He was to die for us, John 12. And as a direct result of his death, many would find life. So just as the seed in the ground, if it stays there on its own, it'll do nothing. If it dies, you and I know it produces fruit, which we'll look at in a minute. And in the same way, Jesus said, when he dies, it's so important that he died on that cross at Calvary in order that many would be made alive. And he goes on to say he said, while the man who hates his life in this world, that's one that, the man who loves his life will lose it, Jesus said. In other words, that's the person that you're doing your own thing, whether it's good or bad, but you don't want God in your life. And that's the person Jesus was talking about. The person who loves his life and he doesn't want to do anything about it. He doesn't want God in his life. And wherever you are, it's so important that you have God in your life today. And then Jesus says this, the man who hates his life in this world, i.e. here's a person who has acknowledged that there's something missing in his or her life. He may not even be a particularly bad person, but he knows there's something missing in his life, and Jesus was saying because of it, he's dissatisfied. He may be to the extreme of hating his life. And he therefore turns to God when he hears the message about being born again. He turns to God. He will have, or Jesus said, he will keep eternal life. Because when you experience the life of being born again, that is the beginning of eternal life. Because eternal life is this, that they may know God, and not only now, but for eternity. It's brilliant, isn't it?